Hi PoE Reddit and whoever else stumbles on this video. When looking at the new data, I realized it had some great potential for projectile cast on crit. Now, quick flashback, bow cast on crit was pretty much my first serious build and what got me hooked to PoE. Back then you would just take a cool rain, get some crit chance, and suddenly you have spells flying everywhere, or something like that. Cast on crit is probably the hardest nerf gem in PoE history. First it had no cooldown, then 0.01 second, then 0.05 seconds, and now 0.5 seconds. So from 10 millisecond cooldown to 500 millisecond cooldown. I haven't seen it used as a main skill since the last nerf, and no, I don't count Casper's well, which is sad because the build space behind it is just absolutely enormous. You can have so many attacks that you can combine with so many different spells and spell combinations. So that's why I'm happy to report that I think it might finally be live again with the new Deadeye. So just in case you have never seen cast on crit before, how it works. So you take an attack, preferably one that does a lot of hits. Whenever that attack hits and crits, then this support gem will cause it to cast one of the attached spells. And any support gems can affect both. So what you do is you take, for example, Tornado Shot, and then a bunch of spells. And when you attack with Tornado Shot and hit something and crit it, then it will cast these spells, like so. Or with greater multiple projectiles, like so. So the main ingredient for cast on crit, obviously, is crit chance. And while crit chance is nowadays not that hard to come by, it is really useful if the crit chance you get actually affects both the attack and the spells, because then you can also scale the spells with crit at crit multi. So let's see what Deadeye gives us. We get 80% increased crit chance against bleeding enemies, and Rupture gives us a chance to bleed enemies. Since our main attack is supposed to do lots of hits anyway, any relevant target is going to be bleeding, as long as you have some fizz damage. It also gives crit multi against bleeding enemies, not just attacks, but anything, so that does scale the spell crit. And you get 100% increased crit chance against targets that are pierced by projectiles. And since you get 3 additional pierced targets here, and all nearby targets are pierced, any relevant target is going to be pierced, so that's another 100% increased crit chance. You cannot use the increased critical strikes gem reasonably because in your main link, and you see this is a 6 link, but you need 1 link for the attack, you need 1 link for greater multiple projectiles really, if you're gonna be serious about it. You need 1 link for cast on crit, and then if you have 2 spells, adding a 3rd spell is 50% more damage, generally speaking. Wasting a gem slot for increased critical strikes is just not an option. That means you need to get whatever crit chance you need and want in other ways, for example, Deadeye. Now, Deadeye also offers some very interesting other tools, such as doubled accuracy rating. For critical strikes, your accuracy rating is actually checked twice. So that may not be obvious, and you probably have to study the wiki in depth to even notice that, but if you have 95% chance to hit with your attacks and you attack something, then there's a 5% chance that you miss. But even if you hit, this chance is rolled again to check if you actually crit. So even if you have 95% chance to hit, you almost have only 90% chance to actually land a critical strike. So accuracy rating is actually very, very important for crit builds and, well, attack crit builds, because spells always hit. And in particular, cast on crit. So this doubled accuracy rating is very, very useful. It also gives you the blink and mirror arrow cooldown recovery speed, so you can move around twice as fast or twice as often with blink arrow. It gives attack speed and projectile damage, so what else would you need? Tailwind, just nice defensive and partially offensive skill. You move slightly faster with the increased speed, and the evasion rating is very welcome. Finally, one of the biggest things that I actually gives you in terms of tools for cast on crit is the 30 life gained when you hit the bleeding enemy. Now, as you can imagine, for projectile cast on crit, there's a lot of stuff flying through the air and a lot of hits going on. And gaining 30 life for every enemy you hit, you have a lot of sustain. So all your, for example, barrage projectiles, each one is going to restore 30 life, and then each projectile that hits the enemy is going to restore an additional 30 life. And for example, against big packs or breaches, this is just, you're unkillable as long as you don't get one shot. Back in the day, you would probably use Thief's Torment, which gives a significant amount of life on hit too, but it would take 2 ring slots essentially. It also gave mana on hit, which this build somewhat lacks, but you can fix that by just taking a 1 small mana leech node. Okay, so we have a lot of crit chance, we have a bunch of accuracy and some other nice things. How do we proceed? So first of all, you obviously want a weapon that has a high amount of crit chance, a base crit chance that you can scale, and a lot of attacks per second are also favorable because it means you can get more chances to proc your spells per time. Wind Ripper is close to optimal for that. You can have better rare bows, but those bows will probably not have quantity and rarity. So Wind Ripper is somewhat best in slot, but a rare bow definitely also works. You just don't get the quantity. To stack some more crit chance and crit multi, you can use, for example, Starkonias, which gives some critical strike chance, it gives attack speed, it gives good life, it has a bunch of evasion. Yeah, Quiver, you can obviously use a spike point arrow quiver. This one is an Elder one. I didn't quite get what I wanted, but life resists attack speed, crit multi, in this case AoE from the Elder effect, all very nice. The rest is just life resists, move speed. Life resists some stats and accuracy. Also life resists stats. Similarly for the belt. Then I'm using the Pandemonious. This amulet, this is one of the breach ones, gives you 20% cold penetration against chilled enemies, and you also automatically chill enemies when you hit them, slowing them by 30%. So this is very useful and very powerful because, again, for the same reason as previously, fitting in a cold penetration gem or any kind of penetration gem into your main links is going to be difficult, if not impossible, or simply not worth it. So getting a significant amount of elemental penetration from the amulet slot is very useful and helps a lot against resistant enemies. You also blind chilled enemies on hit. Now, this build, as should be obvious by now, is evasion based, and blinded enemies have a significantly lower chance to hit you through your evasion, so that helps a lot. You also have a Stip Knight Flask probably, so it's somewhat redundant, but it's definitely very useful. As for the chest piece, a rare armor 6 link will do, even a tabular totally is fine at the start. I chose to get a Queen of the Forest just because it gives you more move speed if you have a lot of evasion, and between Tailwind and scaling evasion in general, that does work. It gives you a bit less life and resist than a rare would give you. There is one more major component to this build, and that is a Diamond Flask. A Diamond Flask makes your critical strike chance lucky, which means you get 2 attempts to succeed a critical strike roll. So for example, if you have 90% crit chance with an attack, then that means you have a 10% chance to not get a crit. And with a Diamond Flask active, and while being lucky, you would have to fail that 90% chance twice. So normally you have a 10% chance to fail, but with a Diamond Flask you only have a 10% times 10%, so a 1% chance to fail. And it affects both attacks and spells. So this build double dips to an extreme amount from Diamond Flasks. In terms of the tree, there's not that much to cover. You get as much life as you can get because you're really starved for it any which way you look. You get crit chance where you can, you get projectile damage, the frenzy charges are nice, more crit chance, crit multi. Acrobatics, since we're evasion based and need some defense against spells, this is some nice damage, and projectile speed is useful. You get the bow crit chance, this is just a nice cluster, this is a nice cluster, and yeah, that's about it. You can get some jewels. These are not particularly good, they're just ones I found. And that's basically it for the tree. Finally, a quick overview over the gem and link setup. We've already covered the main cast and crit setup. I'm using Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice, just out of convenience. I'm also using Arctic Armor. Then we have Blink Arrow, fast attacks, which also helps the Ice Golem. There's a Decoy Totem and a Frost Bomb for utility. Custom damage taken, increased duration, Immortal Call. A Val Haste that you will see me consistently fail to use. Finally, I have a Curse on Hit setup with Frenzy, GMP, Curse on Hit, Assassin's Mark, and Power Charge on Crit. This allows me to keep up Frenzy charges, Power charges, and curse everything in just one small attack. Alright, gameplay time. Now, just as a heads up, this build does not clear Primordial Pool in 30 seconds and it does not one-shot Uber Elder, I'm well aware. Please consult your nearest Headhunter or Glacial Cascade Miner for that. That said, this build definitely is what I would consider viable and has satisfying pack clear and can still manage rares and bosses just fine, mostly because Arctic Breath can still shotgun. The spells I'm using are obviously Freezing Pulse, Frostbolt, and Arctic Breath, and Arctic Breath explodes when it hits a wall, so if multiple of them hit a wall next to each other, then they can shotgun their AoE damage. The traditional single target struggle of cast and crit is somewhat alleviated by this Arctic Breath shotgunning. On that note, Dying Sun Flask would probably raise my boss DPS by quite a lot, but I haven't found the motivation to sink 5x into a good one yet, so that will have to wait. Now here's some footage with Tornado Shot instead of Barrage. It feels better, especially in open areas, because you no longer have to really aim. You can just shoot at your feet for the most part, or in the middle of some pack, whereas with Barrage, if you miss, you just don't get anything. So the rest of the video is just a full waterways clear. Enjoy!